It's your girl Salison. Hello and welcome back to my channel. So this is the fourth video of my channel. I started 2 weeks ago, actually on my birthday, the 19th of October, with the first video where I presented myself to introduce who Salison is. Then my second video went on to mindset, because it is important if we want to start having that financial security or financial independence. We need to change our mindset. Then my third video was on budgeting, how to create your budget, where I gave a simple practical way to create your budget with a journal using a pen and a paper. I also saved the link in the previous video for those who want to prepare their budget using an Excel. So do not hesitate to check out the first 3 videos so you can follow me on this journey. Now, before I start with this week's session, I want to explain why I started with mindsets and how to create your budget. Now, to give a simple analogy, when you are constructing a building, you need to make sure that your foundation is strong enough. It depends on what type of building you want to construct. Either you're building a simple bungalow, a 2-story building, a 14-story building, or even a 37 to 50 flat building. Now, the level of foundation that you put in is totally different for each type of building that you put in, because you need to make sure your foundation is strong enough to hold the weight of the building. And of course, after that, there's also the pillars. And the pillars is what will also make sure that this building is able to withstand the strong winds, the storms, whatever changes we have in the weather or natural disasters that may come. If your pillars and your foundation are strong, your building will stand firm. So basically, the mindset is meant to be your foundation. It's meant to be the fundamental core of everything you want to do. If you want financial independence, if you want financial security, you need to change the way you think about money. You need to change the way you think about yourself. And you need to have a vision and a clear perspective of where you want to go. You need to have strong pillars. And your budgeting becomes the pillars, because that is what holds you. That is what gives you that strong standing and firmness to be able to go in a certain direction. That gives you that vision to say the building is going up. You're building a 37-story building or a bungalow. Your pillars will define how strong and how tall your building is. Now, the budgeting session that I gave last week was just to help you to have a visual perspective of what your money coming in is versus your money going out. Now, before I start, I would like to ask, how many of you created your budget? How many of you have a visual of how much you have coming in versus how much you have going out? I hope you took the time to create your budget. If you didn't, please put this video on pause, create your budget, and then come back to this video so that you can follow and take a conscious action on the next step. This week, we are going to talk about how to consciously split your budget. Remember, in last week's video, I spoke about the 50, 20, 20, 10, where the 50 is the split you make for your fixed cost, the 20 is for your variable cost, the 20 is for your savings or investment, and the 10 is saved for giving or generosity. I'm going to focus on paying yourself first. That's the first part. Your 20% needs to be a conscious act, an amount you put aside before you even start spending. What is paying yourself first? Have you realized that when your salary comes in, you pay everybody else except yourself? You pay the supermarket when you go grocery shopping. You pay your landlord when you have to pay your rent. You pay the insurance company. You pay your child care. You pay everyone else around you. If you go to have fun, you pay the restaurant, you pay the cinema, you pay everyone else, but you have nothing for yourself, nothing saved. You don't pay yourself. So when I say pay yourself first, it means when your money comes in, you put a part of it aside as your income, as your savings, as your security. That is paying yourself first. Now, there are several ways of doing that. The first is, if you have a bank account, you can set in a direct debit. You tell your bank, I have, using the example of last week, I have 2,000 coming in as income, and I want 20% of this as savings. So every time my 2,000 comes into my bank, please take 400 euros and put aside in a special savings account for me. That is one way of paying yourself first. The second is you defining to say, since I've worked on my budget, I'm gonna put 400 aside each month. I will spend within my budget, but I'm not going to touch this 400. One thing that is important to help you stick to the paying yourself first is to have a vision or a goal. Why do you want to save? You need to have a project in mind. You're saving because you want to invest in X, Y, Z project. So you need a minimum capital of 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 50,000. And since you've got that project, you know that you need to save for a period of time in order to build that capital to maybe use as an initial guarantee or an initial deposit for a bank loan. But in order for you to be conscious about your savings, you need to have a project. So the question is, what is your project? I want you to take a minute to write down, what is your project? What do you want to invest in? Do you want to build a house? Do you want to buy a house? Do you want to buy stocks? Do you want to invest in your education? Whatever you want that you know you need to put money aside for, you need to write it down, and you need to write down how much you need to save to get that. Once you have that, it makes it much easier to pay yourself first. Now, why do you need to pay yourself first? You know, most of the time we find ourselves dragging our feet to work, dragging our feet to do whatever we have to do that brings the money in. Why? Because we don't see the fruit of our labor. Since once your money comes in, you spend it all on every other expense except yourself. And when you look at your bank account, you see you're on overdraft, you see you're on a minus, you see yourself borrowing. There is no motivation, there is no excitement to go to work on Monday. By the end of the month, when the money comes in, it's gonna go out anyway. So why should I keep doing this? Why should I join this rat race? Why continue with this vicious cycle? But when you're paying yourself first, trust me, the feeling is different. When I look at my bank account and I see the zeros, I'm like, oh yeah, it's totally worth it. And that is the feeling you get. It builds that dopamine, it builds that joy, it builds that enthusiasm, it builds that passion to continue striving every day because you see the fruit of your labor in your account. So I want you all to make sure that when your money comes in, the first thing you do is to pay yourself first. Put 20% of it aside and be conscious about it. Don't give excuses because you can find 1,001 excuses. put this money aside and make sure, unless you have an emergency, an urgency that is totally and absolutely out of your control, and you need to dip into your savings, do not touch it. You can defer certain expenses to the next month and spend within the budget you create. Meaning, my brain is wired to say, using the example of last week, if I have 2,000 coming in, the actual amount I have to spend is 1,600. How do I know I have 1,600? Because I took the time to first put in my income, money coming in, and I took the time to list all my costs, money going out of my pocket. And now that I know what I have coming in, I consciously said, it is gonna go into my savings because it's within my 20% bracket. And now I'm gonna just work within the 1,600 euro budget because I paid myself first. Salison got paid after my boss paid me. Now that I have my 20% out, I'm left with 80% of my salary, which is now the money that I have to spend. Now, what I have to do is to consciously split the 80% left. I know I have 50% left for my fixed cost. The question is, if I list down my fixed cost, does it fit into the 50%? Your 50% fixed cost should be for needs. Last week, when I had my fixed cost, to go quickly through it, I had my rent, which was 500 euro. I had my food, which was 400 euros. I had my utility bills, which was 200 euros. I had my car insurance, which was 50 euro. And I had my childcare, which was 300 euros. Now, if I put these costs, which are certain costs that I am technically obliged to spend, I am way above my 50%. So now the question is, what decisions can I consciously take to make sure I squeeze these costs into my 50%? So the first is to look at my rent, which is my biggest chunk. Is there a possibility to relocate from my apartment, my room, to a place that is cheaper without compromising on security? Of course, safety comes first. I'm married with kids. But just a simple example, if I was single and I was staying in a 2-bedroom apartment, maybe I need to go into the option of apartment sharing, so that we can share the cost. That can cut down my budget, my cost on rent. Or just a practical example, my husband and I, we decided to move from another house that we were staying, which was even smaller than where we were staying, but it had a swimming pool. And we said, with the mosquitoes we've got and our workload and everything we do, we barely enjoy the swimming pool. Is this a cost we need to have? Maybe in future, when we have more time and less mosquitoes, we can probably go find a place which has a pool. So we decided to move from where we were staying to a place which was bigger, with more rooms, a bigger balcony for the kids to play, and to give out the swimming pool. And with that, we actually had a 15% reduction on our rental cost. Now, this is a conscious decision taken because we identified our bracket of 50% budget, and we took a decision to make sure that we can fit in our fixed cost within this bracket. Now, on your food, you can decide to properly organize what you need as groceries and do an assessment. Which supermarket has a more decent price? Example, do you really need to go buy your fresh tomatoes, your garlic, your vegetables? Do you need to buy it from the supermarket? Or maybe you can go to the local market and help these young investors or these old investors, whichever the age, that are trying to make an ends meet, that have actually grown stuff in their backyard and trying to convert it into money, maybe you would pay 40% less and get more organic products to buy there than buying it from the supermarket. Now that can already help reduce your food cost. All these conscious decisions you take, you need to do it without compromising on your health. So I do not encourage trying to save money and just going for cheap product that is full of chemicals, that is gonna give you cancer and other medical situations just to save money. No, it's rather looking at what is the value proposition, what is the cost benefit, where can I buy it and get still organic product at a more decent and reasonable price. Your utility bills, what decision can you take at home, or even the use of your phone, your internet, to make sure that you save your cost? You can either decide that instead of using air cons in all the room air condition, you can use the fan because it's cheaper, it uses less current. You need to take a conscious decision on your fixed cost to make sure you can put in your cost within the 50% bracket. Now, if you take all these decisions and you realize your fixed cost is still out of your 50% bracket, and these are costs you must absolutely incur, then you need to move to how can I increase my revenue? Can I find side jobs? You need to look at what are your side hustles that can get you more income to make sure that you can cover your 50% cost. Then on your variables, these are costs that you can absolutely control. Right? These are things that you want, these are for pleasure, you can control those costs. And once you know that you've got 20% of your budget for that, you need to fix what you have to spend. And when you exceed that, you need to defer certain costs for next month, which means you avoid impulse buying. When you go shopping, you need to know what you need to buy, and everything that is not on your list, avoid it. And of course, you can decide not to go out every weekend so that you spend time and invite friends home, because it's much cheaper to buy the drinks and cook at home. These are certain decisions that you can take. You can go shopping and decide that instead of buying this jacket that costs 200 euros this month, you save over a period of time and buy it in 5 months because you don't really need it. It's not a need, it's a want. The final one, the 10% for generosity. Now, this is money you give to support your family, to the church, to whatever charity you want to give. Because I believe that there is more blessing in giving than receiving. When you give, you start the process of receiving, because that means that you create a balance where someone else needs to receive. And when that person receives, there's a blessing that comes to it. So that's all for this week. Make sure that now that you have your budget, you analyze your budget, you split your cost, you pay yourself first, always pay yourself first. You define what your fixed cost, your needs are, and you see how you optimize your cost in your needs. You see what your variable costs are. You see how you consciously take decisions to make sure your variable cost fits within your 20%. And you see where your 10% for generosity can be allocated to your family, to the church, to your friends, to whoever. But make sure that you have power over your budget, not your budget taking power over you. And once you move to that conscious breakdown on your budget, trust me, you are on your journey to the financial security you dream of. You are on your journey to financial independence, to financial autonomy. So please, again, the challenge for you this week is, if you prepared your budget last week, this week, look at your list of expenses and see how you can split your expenses to the various percentages that I just explained, and take that conscious decision to make certain changes to make sure that your expenses fit within the Camel Bear, the 50, 20, 20, 10. That's all for this week. So next week, I'm going to talk about how to make 1 month salary with 5 months savings. That's all for today. Stay tuned for next week's training. And remember, the power lies in your hands. You have all you need to make that difference. It starts with the mindset, it continues with the conscious action to budget, and then it takes that conscious decision to restructure your budget to make sure your pillars are strong for the building you want to put up. For that personal financial building, whether it be a bungalow, €1,000 financial net worth, €1,000,000 financial net worth, €1,billion financial net worth, it all lies in your hands. You've got everything it takes right here and right here to make that difference. So take that conscious action now, and remember, the power lies in your hands. Stay tuned for next week's video on how to save a month's salary in 5 months. Without much ado, I say, Biddy Bam, your girl Salison, I'm out.